Welcome to Long Term. I'm Ty King, and this podcast is about recovery. And it's a term that's kind of used in certain circles for different things, but it's something that we all kind of need as a form of healing. If you lived in this on this world for long enough, you have something that you need to unwind from or unpack from. And so we are talking to the professionals. We're talking to people who have successfully come out of very difficult circumstances and learning from them directly. How did you get out of this? Or talking to professionals like Angela, who's on the show today, who is, you've got a lot of the letters behind her name. You know what I mean? You have the
Letters.
credentials. You got the credentials to say, hey, I know what I'm talking about, rather than somebody on TikTok who's like, just randomly jumps on and now they're the expert. Yeah.
I'm so glad you brought that up.
Really?
Yes,
Okay.
because I am an anti-TikToker.
You're an anti TikToker.
Like,
I've never heard of this one. Okay.
yes, because I find that I get very frustrated because they usually tell half of the evidence-based
Mm.
intervention, and the
Yeah.
other half is something that they interpreted at a, not to sound this way, but uneducated understanding of the concept.
Yeah.
But so I am a licensed clinical social worker. I've done that for close to 20 years. I'm a certified clinical trauma professional. I've worked with a very diverse population, everything. My first job was inpatient psychiatric in a state hospital. I've worked inpatient psych a couple times. I enjoy that. I've worked in the substance use disorder field. I've worked in private practice. I say I've done all the social worky things, but I identify as a psychotherapist because that's what I've put my emphasis on is more clinical. Even though social workers, we do have a broad range of advocacy in this, but I would say my specialty is the certified clinical trauma professional. And I love that the word, you use the word of healing
Mhm.
from something because I think when we hear the word trauma over and over again, we think of like PTSD, but just because you've been exposed to trauma does not mean that you have PTSD, but you still may be suffering from that exposure and need to heal.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I don't know. I think the terms that we use, they kind of, get played out a lot. Well, it's like, uh, love or trauma, or that's another word that's coming up. It's used a lot in a lot of different contexts, but we don't really know, what it really means, or like it loses its flavor after a while. You know what I mean? It's like chewing a piece of gum after a while, and it's like you're just used to it, but not really understanding.
Right. Like I'll give you an example. A 12-year-old told me, "This is traumatizing to me." And I said, "No,
Yeah.
this made you uncomfortable."
Right.
I don't really like, let's have this conversation. Did this make you uncomfortable or did this traumatize you? And the 12-year-old was like, "Oh, it made me uncomfortable."
Yeah.
Right.
That's a great
So,
point. Yeah,
yeah.
for sure. Um, so you've been a psychotherapist for quite a while, but you have a military background.
Yes, actually, yeah. I always forget that one, don't I?
Yeah.
But it's a huge part of who I am. And, I was in the military. I was in the Marine Corps for 9 years, which clearly shaped me. And I'm still learning in ways that it has shaped me. I'm still usually early. Unfortunately, that doesn't always happen with Ty, but usually I'm always early. I'm very efficient at things. I like efficiency. I like operational things to run efficiently. Um, and I love to gain knowledge.
Mm.
I love to gain knowledge. And I think that shaped me. It also gave me a lot of confidence that I didn't have before, a lot of exposure to different cultures, different people, different ways of life, all across the world.
Yeah.
Um, so it is a big part of who I am today, and I can't deny it. It
Right.
changed me.
Yeah. Well, we were talking earlier before the show started, and you were talking about the structure and needing organization. And yes.
I like it. I like
Yeah.
structure. I like organization. I like
Mhm.
planning. Uh, And I think that definitely structured me in that way and helped me be successful probably through my education.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It makes sense. So therapy, you started that while you were in the military, or was that something you had in mind?
Became interested in it, while I was in the military, and actually, now that I think about it, I did go see 2, counselors while I was in the military, and they really impressed me because I had gotten into some life situations that I just thought were impossible to get out of.
Yeah.
And then you go talk to this person and they normalize it for you. And they're like, well, actually, you just need to you have these options, pick one and do it. Like,
Yeah.
and they were very supportive. And that helped me a lot. And I thought,
Mm.
this whole therapy thing works,
Yeah.
like to be able, and that's where I learned, like, "Oh my gosh, they had this information to help me," and it saved a lot of
Yeah.
suffering.
I think it's incredibly helpful no matter what you're doing. I mean, if it's, work or life or relationships or how you raise your child or whatever, like it involves, everything involves psychology because everything starts with your brain, right? It's a thought before it's an action.
Right, and
And
you think about the Marine Corps, you take so many diverse, usually, younger people all over the United States, and it sounds hardcore and it's got this reputation or whatever, but they do everything they can to make you successful.
Mm.
And I had never had that experience before, where you have like a team of people working with you to make you successful. And I feel like that's what therapy is. When you go into therapy,
Mhm.
you're joining another person who is there to be with you to help you be successful in what you want to do.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. The military thing, like you're talking about, you went to, therapy while you were there. You went to therapists that help you understand it. And so strange that right now there's talk about taking therapists, out of the military because that's what the chaplain's job apparently is supposed to be.
Yeah, I have some views on
Yeah,
that.
we won't have to get into it, but it's very. I'm glad that you tell this story about how useful it was for you as somebody who actually has lived experience
I
in
would
it.
say that when I went and,
Yeah.
the therapists were civilians,
Mhm.
and I don't know if that's still the case or not.
Right.
I'm not pro making the military, officer or whatever a therapist.
Yeah.
I think there needs to be some space there, but
Oh, for sure.
that's probably another topic.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Um. Yeah, and I think just understanding ourselves, and that's why love talking to people that are in the professional fields like what you're in. I took a nothing like what you've been through, of course, but I took a social psychology course, right, a college course, and it was probably the most impactful thing that I've ever been through. Out of all of like going to governor school, out of any marketing class or whatever, like none of that stuff matters. Like it, when you understand yourself and how your own brain works, you start understanding other people better and you start understanding your social interactions a lot better and you understand like why you're getting the outcomes that you're getting and why you think the way that you do. And so, yeah, I
That's huge because actually now that you say that, my first psychology course, it taught me how the brain learns.
Mm.
And before, I didn't really know how I learned. And once I figured that out, I was like, whoa, I can learn a lot
Yeah.
more and be more efficient at that. Um, and you're right, like it's all about relationships and learning how to, what is that old saying? Like being doing the same thing over and over again,
Hmm.
doing the same
Oh, the definition of insanity. Yes. Yeah.
insanity,
Yeah.
right? But when you learn like just Psych 101,
Right.
you learn that you have to kind of not manipulate, alter
Yeah.
yourself and learn yourself. And that's a huge part of therapy is that we try every person that comes into therapy, the first thing that I screen for and try to find out is how insightful they are.
Yeah.
Like how well do you know yourself?
Hmm.
Because most of the time that's where you're starting
Yeah.
is learning yourself
Right.
and having a space to do that.
Absolutely. And so I know you from the recovery field of like substance use recovery, like you've been in those circles and some of the events and things that I've been through. I think in that, and I think probably just for anybody, but I mean, like, especially in that, I can relate. people that have been through, I guess, traumatic instances, but like a lot of it was caused on themselves and substance use and that type of thing. But like,
Yeah.
uh, been there, done that. Not with substances, but like the prison experience and all of that stuff. You know what I mean? Um, and when I sit here with people that have lived experience like that, they go through their story. You know what I mean? And they talk about some of the terrible things they had been through. Um, but some of the times, like, the details aren't, like, crystal clear to them, and so we'll skip spots, and I'll be like, "Well, what happened here?" And then be like, "I honestly don't remember a lot of the time." And so, looking at your extensive LinkedIn profile where all the different things that you specialize in, something that really stood out to me, was brain spotting,
Yeah.
and I looked into just barely on the surface because I'd rather learn it from somebody who knows what they're talking about, but it seems like it's a mode of therapy that uses your eye movement to sort of bring back memories. And so I'd love to have an explanation of how this actually works from you. Of
And I'm gonna try to explain it. You know, you can get very deep into it. I brought
course.
a book,
Yes, there are
you
prompts.
know.
Yeah. Oh, you have a book too.
There's books, there's videos, but I did do a training.
And it's not a long book if you guys want to read it. So,
Yeah, it's a long book. I don't think you'll find it that interesting, honestly. But but there's a lot of stuff out there related to it. It is newer because when I say newer, there's a lot of things that are newer, what I call newer in our
yeah.
field. If you think about it, like PTSD was only became a diagnosis in the 70s.
Yeah.
To me, that's new, you know. Brain spotting was only developed in 2003.
Well,
So this is new. And it did come from the core of EMDR, if you're familiar.
so I've seen, yeah. And when quickly Googled brain spotting, there was brain spotting versus EMDR, and I don't know what that is. I didn't look up what that.
Yeah, so I'm not an expert in in EMDR. What I do though is I've been pretty open in most spaces about my history and trauma, and I do have PTSD. And I also, though, as a professional, I want to experience any type of intervention before I prescribe it
Mm.
to my clients so I know what it feels like, right? And understand it. So I had a pretty extensive trauma history from all different things just in life, we'll say.
Mhm.
So, I finally went to a trauma therapist who did EMDR on me, and I did trauma therapy with her for, like, 5 years.
And what is the MBR?
EMDR, it is more of the eye movement, and it's,
So eye movement.
mhm, and I would have to actually look that up.
ER. Okay. Yeah.
So, I experienced that, and it did help me
Yeah.
for a short period of time. Now she was a very seasoned practitioner. She's retired now. Her name is Sharon Dunaway. I know she would not mind me sharing this at all. And she said, "You know what, Angela?" She said, "There's this new treatment out, and it's called brain spotting, and I've been learning about it, and I want to try it on you."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Yeah, let's do this." You know, therapists, we look at these things a little bit differently, okay? Because there's some things I wanted to bring up about the something that is very important in any type of treatment therapy is something like we call attunement,
Mm.
which means being in tune with yourself
Mhm.
and also ensuring that your client is in tune with themselves, right?
Yeah.
I cannot take a complex psychotherapy intervention with you if you don't know yourself.
Mm.
Okay. If you don't know your mind body connection,
Yeah.
or if you're under substances use or something, it's going to be a waste of my time and your time. It's just like throwing a dart at a random board. You know what I mean?
What are some clear measures of knowing if you know yourself or not?
Mm-hmm. So what I usually do is first you have to build the rapport with the person,
Okay.
right? So that's how you start the attunement, is I have to get to know you.
Mhm.
So I have to get to know when you like I don't know if you noticed this morning, like, it's a habit for me. I'm like, "So, how are you feeling?"
Yeah, yeah.
Because, like
Fidgeting with the buttons and stuff over there.
exactly,
Yeah,
right? Yeah,
yeah.
so I picked up on something that I don't wanna say something that you were annoyed with maybe. Is that fair to
Oh,
say?
sure, I
I
mean,
don't know, like, something that I was like, "Oh, he's
yeah,
going to do something. He's focused on something,"
yeah.
right? But when you're sitting in a chair like this and we're talking and we bring up a topic, let's say something deep, like, I don't know this about you personally, but
Mhm.
I'm just saying in general. You, like, I usually ask people, I say, I want to ask you some check in the box questions, no judgment. And I'll say, where were you born? And they'll tell me.
Yeah,
And I'll say, who raised you? They rarely say my mom and my dad.
yeah.
They'll usually say, "Oh, my grandma, my dad, my mom, this." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Where was your dad?" "Oh, he was in prison," or "He was an alcoholic," or vice versa. My mother was, an alcoholic, or my grandma raised me, and I'll say, "Well, was your childhood disruptive?"
Mhm.
If they can say like, "Yeah, yeah, it was sad, and I was bounced around, and it was hurtful." So that tells me they know something about themselves in their life, right?
Yeah,
If they're just like, "Oh, no, it was totally cool," like, they don't wanna talk about it, they're just
right,
like they're not ready for that. Does
yeah.
that make sense?
No, for sure, and it happens a lot. I think, when I was in that for a while, you know what I mean, throughout my teenage years and things like that, like, home life was a wreck because of my alcoholic father who would, pass out in the yard before he even got to the door, and that stuff like, and the abuse of my mom and all that. But, like, for me, that was just that's going home and being there, and then school's something different, you know what I mean? And
Yeah,
so,
ooh, that's your norm,
yeah.
right?
So if somebody asked
Yeah.
me, even especially a therapist, I think, because I was kind of on guard with therapists, and I went to a couple, you know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
And so they asked me, "How's home life?" "Oh, it's okay."
Yeah.
Not okay, you know what I mean? But,
Right. But yeah.
yeah.
So that's where you try to get you to get more in touch with those deeper feelings that are like the underlying
Mhm,
layer. Okay. So we have like our layer here, but if you're going to do work, you got to get under here.
mhm,
And, there's all those cliches of peeling back the onion peel or, all this, but that's the reality. You've got to get to know and be in tune with that person at a deeper level.
mhm. Yeah, and so that's how you can tell if somebody knows themselves,
Yeah,
right?
it just if they know themselves.
Right.
Also, I didn't bring my little whiteboard, but I usually have a whiteboard, and I talk about emotions, and I'll say like, "Okay, here's a 10 where I'm really angry,
Yeah.
okay? 1, I'm chilled. What does 10 look like?"
Oh,
And
okay.
like, I don't know. I'm angry. I'm like, no, tell me. Like, does this mean you're yelling at your spouse or you're punching a hole in the wall?
Right.
I need to know what this looks like. Okay. And if they can be honest with me and say, yeah, I threw some things or I punched a hole in the wall or
Yeah.
I punched a mirror, like, okay, so we know where your 10's at now
Yeah.
and you know where your 10 is at. So now we're having a conversation because you know yourself. Okay. But we want to keep you and learn ways to help you stay down here
Mhm.
and have a conversation about what we call your threshold of tolerance. Okay. But if you don't even know what any of this is,
Right.
we're not going to hear you. Right.
Yeah.
We're gonna spend some time of get you learning yourself and me getting to know you.
Yeah.
Uh, because when you go into the brain spotting, it's very much about feeling it in your body. Probably everybody knows now the book, the body heats the score.
Mhm.
Familiar with that? So I tell people when you're going to 10, you don't notice it at first, but your body will tell you. You have to become in tune with your body.
Yeah.
Are you getting like I'm getting right now, a little dry mouth because 'cause I'm getting, like, nervous,
Yeah.
right?
So you got your drink there. That's yeah.
Breathe. So, that's me showing, like, insightfulness into myself, right? Like, I told you that up front, right?
Yeah. Right.
Get nervous, like, I need a drink,
Yeah.
right?
Here's what you need to know about me. Yeah. Yeah.
So a lot of times you just start out with that, and surprisingly, a lot of people that right there, I'm telling you, is golden. It will help because usually what your body will tell you is you'll sit and you'll think about it, and I'm like, that's usually kinda like your first sort of homework or conversation.
Mhm.
You might get tense shoulders, right?
Right.
You might notice that you're getting hot or warm or not nauseous, that's a big especially in children, they say that a lot. "My tummy hurts, I don't wanna go to school." Their tummy really does hurt, but it's really anxiety probably,
Okay.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
But they have to make that connection, and they haven't learned how to do that.
Mm.
So, as a therapist, we help them make that connection. So, the first thing is to become in tune with yourself, okay? And trust and being and your therapist to be able to be in tune with you, because when you start doing the brain spotting, you have a headset on, usually listening to music, which we call bilateral stimulation.
Mhm.
I don't know if you're familiar with that.
No.
It used to be like you would have to go buy the special CD, okay?
Okay.
That had it. So it sounds like and I have some I can send you later if you want to, I meant to do that. So the concept is can I, bend down and
Yeah, for
the
sure.
brain, or should I pull the brain up?
I mean, like, for the camera, you should probably pull it up.
Uh, Okay. So the concept is if you listen to the bilateral stimulation, it sounds to the regular ear, it just sounds like some type of spa music or relaxing music, okay?
Right.
But it's stimulating certain sounds here and here,
Okay.
which is activating the brain, okay? And you want to find what we call activation points.
Mm.
It's stimulating all these synapses in the brain.
Yeah.
By the way, this is very old phrenology brain, but I just love it because
Yeah.
I think it just shows the pieces better. So when we're talking here, we're talking in the cognitive part of the brain.
Mhm.
We're aware of what we're saying mostly, right?
Right.
That's not where trauma is held. And when I say trauma, I want to be clear that I'm talking about it doesn't mean that you got beat up or you were in a battle or something. It can be something of discomfort.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So trauma is held actually, say, closer to here,
In the back of the head.
right?
Okay.
Which, if you notice, is close to
Spine.
spine and your central nervous system.
Mm.
So there's a couple of different theories on this.
Okay.
If you want to look at this through an addiction lens or a trauma lens, okay? And I actually consulted one of my addiction friends a couple weeks ago on this, and he has a way he looks at it with addiction, and I have a way that I look at it with trauma, and I think both are correct, okay? Just depending on a human being. So trauma is held here in what I call flashes.
Okay.
Okay, so you imagine just say you turn on all your photos, right? You probably have a bazillion and they're just flashing.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
No, they're just like going back and forth.
Right.
That's how trauma is held. And you may not pick up every piece, and it may not be a picture. It could be something that you have seen, it could be something you have heard, a tone in a voice, an action, emotion, smell,
Mhm.
taste. Those are all huge things that will trigger this
Yeah.
trauma, okay? So, if it can hit the central nervous system, then it bypasses this part of the brain completely, bypasses it, and you go straight into fight, flight, or fawning. So, and I don't know if people here have talked much about fawning.
Flight, fight, or fawning?
Yeah.
Or would the last one be? I think what everybody knows the first two.
Yeah. So fawning is newer, I would say, but um the first time I heard the concept of fawning, but I didn't know what it was again a younger cuz I don't work with kids, but I have kids in my life, and
Mhm.
I learn from them, because they just say it straight up like it is,
Yeah,
you know
yeah.
what I mean? So I was talking to, say, like, a friend's child, I was like, "Oh, you're doing so great in school, and you're so perfect at
Mhm.
this, and you're this and that." And she said, "Oh, that's because when I was 2, I spilled my sippy cup, and my dad screamed in my face for 2 hours, so I learned that I had to just be perfect at everything."
Wow. Okay.
That's fawning.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So you will see it sometimes in relationships where you're like, "Oh my gosh, that guy's been beating that woman and abusing her for 20 years and she seems just fine with it."
Yeah.
That's fawning, right?
So how so?
She has developed, he or she,
Okay.
because it can be he or she. Okay. And it can even happen in the workplace, whatever.
Gotcha.
You have developed skills where you maladaptive skills,
Mm,
people take the abuse
mm.
and keep going.
Okay.
And you will, try to avoid the abuse.
Yeah.
Walking on eggshells, for example,
Okay.
something like that.
So rather than fighting back or running away from it, you're adapting to it and okay, in a
Staying in
way
it.
and staying in it. Yeah. Okay. That
Mhm,
makes
and
sense.
sort of accepting, not sort of, but accepting the abuse,
That makes sense. Okay.
which is not healthy either, right?
No, not at all.
Right. So that's gonna lead to a whole other boatload of problems,
Right.
right?
Sure.
Depression, self-esteem, we can go on.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So, when you have addiction, right, it kills, well, different drugs do different things, but
Mhm.
only because, I have my history with methamphetamines, and I've worked with that a lot. It does kill these synapses.
Yeah.
So it slows down this transfer. Okay. So you might have something here that is disturbing to you, but these synapses are weak or dead.
Mm.
So you don't even care. You will put yourself in a place of danger to get the drugs or whatever you need,
Right.
because you're not thinking cognitively with your cognitive part of your brain, right? It's not
Sure.
there,
Yeah.
you know? So either it slows down, my addiction friend would say that these synapses start to die, but you can rebuild them. This is all, as Samantha said, Sam, this is all rebuildable. This is all fixable. That's one thing I want to be super, super clear. Like, all of this is treatable.
Mm.
All PTSD, addiction, everything is all treatable if you have the right interventions. Okay.
Okay.
So, what often prevents people from getting the help from trauma is talking about it sucks.
Mhm.
You're reliving the trauma,
Right.
you know? So the concept is if you have your brain, you have your music, which is usually done by a headset, which I forgot to bring my headset today. And you'll have the music on bilateral stimulation, right? So it's going back and forth. And I'm going to sit down the brain for a minute. And there's also the point that you brought up, the eye movement.
Pointer? Oh,
Yeah, yes. Pointer is very
nice.
important.
Yeah.
Okay. So you take the pointer, and there's a few different ones. I have a red one too that I like. But you start to stare at the pointer,
Mhm.
okay? And what you do is you imagine, it kind of feels, I've had so many different descriptions of this, but people feel like you go into deep meditation. So you have the music going on, right?
Mhm.
You're in tune with your body, okay? That means you know if you're starting to feel nauseous, you're able to articulate if you're getting hot, and your therapist knows you, because all your therapist is doing is watching your body, okay?
Yeah.
The expression on your face, if your cheeks are getting flushed, if you're starting to twitch, the expressions change. So you have to be very, that's why psychotherapy is very intimate and you have
Mm.
to have a connection.
Yeah.
So the therapist will have you stare at the pointer, okay? And it'll usually be up against the wall.
Mhm.
And you'll stare at the pointer while you're looking at the music. And usually I tell someone to start out with a thought that brings them discomfort. It may not be like the biggest trauma in their life, but something that they want to work on that brings them discomfort. Okay. And you move the pointer back and forth. And you can talk or you don't have to talk. Usually, what people do to me, I always give them that choice, is they sometimes just, I'll say, "How are you feeling here?" And I am still shocked to this day at the feelings and emotions that come out that, you know, they were unaware of, that I was unaware of.
Yeah.
But you can probably sum up, like, this is a recent example. I do this a lot. Like, I do a lot of co-work with other therapists. Some therapists don't like to do that. I promote that, because I have a colleague, she had worked with someone, 6 or 7 months, and they were stuck,
Mhm.
you know? She doesn't know how to do brain spotting, and she's like, "Look, I've gotten him where he's in tune, okay?" We did a lot of she did a lot of dialectical behavioral therapy with him. He can identify his emotions. You can't process an emotion if you can't identify it, okay?
Yeah.
So he got to that point, but she felt stuck with him. So we did the brain spotting, and immediately we started and we'll move the pointer, and I'll be watching your body, right? And if I see some discomfort or tension in your body, I will say something like, "How are you feeling right here?"
Mm.
And I've had people say, "I feel like I'm gonna throw up."
Yeah.
I brought over a trash can. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I'm like, "Do you feel like you wanna stay here for a while, or do you wanna back off?" And sometimes I'll say, "Let's back off for a minute," and we'll back off, and we'll find a safety point.
That's really interesting. Yeah.
Mhm.
Because I'm feeling it as you're doing that. Because
Mhm.
if you're an audio listener, by the way, it's a telescopic rod with like a rounded white tip on the end of it.
Mhm.
And so just following it by eyes, like when you were talking about that, you were just talking about bringing up, something that makes you just
Mhm.
uncomfortable, right? And then you've got it like a 45-degree to you. And when you raise it up higher, it feels like the tension is going up inside of me. It's so strange.
Okay, so wherever you feel that tension going up, that's your activation point.
Yeah. Okay.
That means we're activating something in here that has created some kind of discomfort or trauma. I'm trying to
Yeah.
be careful with my words.
Okay.
And you can stay there and you can work on that as long as you want. And then we can back off when you want.
Yeah.
Okay? Because I never want to
Sorry.
leave you in this space for too long
Mhm.
unless you want it.
Right.
Okay? So this is, are there any questions about that?
No, it's just fascinating because I'm learning a lot about myself right now.
Yeah, and we do it with, like, the bilateral
Yeah.
simulation, and I encourage that to everyone to try the bilateral simulation music because it's everywhere now. It's on Spotify, it's on YouTube,
Okay.
and I had a, concussion several months ago, and that was actually recommended to me to just listen to the bilateral stimulation music. Um, and so when you're working those 2 points, right, of activating the synapses in the brain and you're using your pointer, you are clearing out traumatic memories and experiences from your brain
Wow.
without having to talk about it, without having to be re-traumatized.
Really interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. And it makes, I mean, sort of sense in that, well, earlier you were talking about how, like, some of those memories, that are being stored back there as trauma, can be triggered by any kind of number of things, right? And so that's something we don't really have control over. The people call them triggers, and there's other people that have softer terms for it, but um, a smell, you know what I mean? Or seeing a certain area we used to hang around where a lot of things, you remember a lot of bad things happening there. Yeah. Like any of those types of things can just immediately send your brain there without that.
Yes, and it can send you into that fight or flight.
Right.
Which can be, which when you go into fight or flight, to most people, it doesn't feel like fight or flight. It just feels extremely, like, high anxiety and discomfort,
Mhm.
like or a panic attack,
Yeah.
Like, even, like I said, I like to be open because I feel like, especially in the movement of therapy right now, it used to be we never self-disclose. Back in the day, we were taught not to self-disclose. Now we are taught to self-disclose if it can help the other person,
Mm.
okay?
Yeah.
Obviously, we're not wanting to sit and talk about ourselves all the time, but I recently went through, um, a tough experience, and I went to my psychiatrist, and I'm like, "What is wrong with me?" You know?
Yeah.
And he said, "Well, it's your anxiety." And I was like, "Well, I thought it was my PTSD." And he's like, "Well, duh, Angela, your PTSD is causing you anxiety."
Right.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
And so even for me, I'm like, "Oh, okay, thanks, doc, for explaining that to me," because, um and that's also what's so great about therapy is we're going through life feeling these things and experiencing them and that discomfort. And when you, like you said, you go into maybe a workplace or a store even or whatever, you get this anxiety and you just like I say hard knuckle through it and you go on throughout your day
Yeah.
and do what you gotta do because we know how to compartmentalize. Most people, you compartmentalize it, you do what you gotta do. But if you don't ever go back and address it,
Right.
then it's gonna happen again,
Sure.
you know?
Yeah. No, that's fascinating. I don't know what it is about the eye movement that does that. That's pretty interesting. But it makes sense if like a smell or something like that can trigger you, then
Oh, yes, I literally have had, and this has been probably like 20 years ago, but, I was working with someone who had a bad childhood experience, let's say,
Mm.
and, they realized that the person who had done that to them had been chewing mint gum, and they later realized that they got triggered around mint gum.
Wow. Yeah.
Another common thing with, uh, sexual trauma is colognes or smells
Mhm.
or, those are all when I say those flashes of trauma held. And, you can work and you can work and you can work. But, I think people put too much pressure on themselves of like, oh, this is my trauma trigger. This is my trauma. Let's be real. You don't know.
Right. Yeah. Until it happens, like
You
you're no
don't know.
predicting. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Like you can identify some as you go through life. You know what I mean?
Sure.
But you don't have them all nailed down. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah, and we have some, like, our big that's kinda like I don't wanna get off too much on that kick either, but, it used to be we thought only our veterans could have PTSD. I still hear that now, I couldn't have PTSD
I've
because
never been to war. Yeah.
exactly, yeah, 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 even military
I've
people
had a great life compared to that.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, um, but actually, now that I think about it, when I worked in the first time I worked in the state hospital,
Mhm.
most of the traumatic stories came from, uh, parents or teachers or coaches, someone of an
Yeah. Of
authority figure in their life that just hurt them in a way,
course.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying necessarily it had to be, like, sexual abuse or this, but
Right.
some type of maybe bullying, hurtfulness, embarrassment, all of those things, and I think it's healthy and good to, like, clean out our brain, you
Yeah.
know?
And I mean, emotional abuse and everything. Like the girl you were talking about earlier, where like
Yeah.
dad was upset with her grades and screamed at her for it. You know what I mean? That's stuck with her. You know what I mean? And it will for the rest of her life.
Oh, for
Yeah.
sure, yeah. And then, so anyway, I did the EMDR. It did help me for a while,
Mm.
for a couple of years, and then I had a very close friend of mine die by suicide, and so it kinda flipped me into another loop of that, trauma trigger, fight or flight, not mentally doing well, so I went back to my therapist, and we did more brain spotting, and the brain spotting stuck with me. The brain spotting has been personally very helpful to me,
Yeah.
and that's why I recommend it, and it's fairly easy. You see, you have your tools. You don't need as
Yeah.
many tools as you need. You really just need the pointer.
Right.
And honestly, the brain thing is new. I just actually printed off a piece of paper from the internet that had a picture of the brain.
Yeah.
We had to do some basic psychoeducation for the person and get their buy-in
Yeah.
to believe that it'll work, and then let them experiment with it. And so for me, what I do with a lot of people is like, "Hey, if you're unsure, let's just try it a couple minutes, see how it feels."
Right.
Um, I personally haven't had anybody that I've done braid spotting on say, "That did nothing for me."
Mm.
I haven't.
You've never had anybody? Okay.
I've
Yeah.
only had powerful experiences. That's been in my experience. I've sent people to other people, when I was, younger in my practice because I thought it was just like, oh, a technique, like, oh, go to her for some brain spotting. But I don't think they had, and they're like,
Yeah.
it didn't really do much for me. But I think it's because I missed out on the piece of the attunement and the relationship.
Mhm. So that kind of ties into my next question, what I had for you. What should people look for when they're looking for a therapist or psychotherapist, I guess, specifically? I know because like when I was looking for, therapy, like didn't know where to start, and there's tons and tons of therapists out there, and maybe you're on some sort of uh insurance, health insurance plan where like there's they have their people that you in their network that you can go through to use your insurance, like yada yada. Anyways, I ended up choosing somebody who specialized in trauma for one, because a lot of them are listed their specialties and things, but also LGBTQ. Not that I'm part of that, but I felt like they could understand my story of having been through prison and trying to integrate into society. Like, I related that to be that. Yeah, right.
That's interesting.
Where it's like to be out
Okay.
in right. So what does it say about me? No,
No, but
to
I
be in
like it.
society
I
and
like
you're
it.
sort of living and trying to live amongst everybody else, but you've got sort of this secret or this other thing that makes you so different from everybody else. And I was like, well, since they have experience with that in that area, maybe my prison experience will also be something they could help me with. So,
I think that's pretty smart because if you think about it, um, because of your experience, people do have stereotypes and
mhm,
judgments. Even therapists have stereotypes and judgments, and we are taught to learn to be aware of our biases.
mhm.
That doesn't mean that a lot do it, right?
Yeah.
Like, I cannot tell you, like, since I didn't work in SUD for a long time, because of the stigma of my own history and my family and things like that. But even after working in it for 5 years and me being at LCSW
Mhm.
for classes for my PhD, um, I do believe I was stigmatized because of my history, you know?
Yeah.
So that would make sense if you already know there's a population that is probably suffering from something like that.
Mhm.
And you gotta think about vulnerable populations. What is a vulnerable population? This was even new to me because I was finishing up some of my dissertation work and, now we have to go through the board to make sure everything is ethical and this.
Mhm.
People who suffer from addiction in the state of Arkansas are, by the state, considered a vulnerable population.
Hmm.
So, but we don't always, our society does not treat them that way.
Yeah.
If you have been in prison, you are considered a vulnerable population.
Right.
So you have to go through all of these ethics boards to make sure that you're not re traumatizing or doing more harm than good.
Mhm.
Sorry if I got off on a tangent on that.
No, that's
But,
good. That's good.
like, I definitely say, insurance is important, but when you go to your insurance carrier, they can't keep up with everything. You know what I mean? They don't like, if you go to their website, they can't keep up, and the therapist can't keep up with updating all these things,
Sure.
like, uh, January 9th, I'm gonna be in network with, like, 3 more, uh, providers, and I don't know who they are, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? So, I think just kind of, like, 1, obviously, you're in the community of healing, so people that know people, and when you hear somebody having a good experience with someone, that to me means a lot, right? Um, and your vibe, if you guys can click,
Yeah.
but also being able to advocate for yourself, like, uh, my therapist now, I've been doing this for a while, and I went to him on purpose because he's been doing this for a while, and he had had several jobs in the past that I had had as, say, like, clinical director or operational director, so I'm like, "Oh, for me, this is gonna be easy, I don't have to explain all this to him."
Yeah.
But the first day I walked in, he was just, like, typing the whole time, and I was like, are you gonna do that the whole time? Because if you are, this is not gonna work."
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's okay to say that to your
Right.
therapist,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like,
No, definitely.
people should feel empowered to say things to their therapist because the therapists want to accommodate you.
Mhm.
They just may not know what is making you comfortable or uncomfortable.
Right. And that might also be part of their personality and how they work, because like being on the keyboard might just be how he processes and works and does
He
things like
completely
that.
respected me and he put the
Yeah,
keyboard away.
which is
You know
good.
what I mean?
So I completely agree in that you need to click with your therapist, and you need to, be on some sort of grounds where like you get along as human beings, as well as a therapy client. But
Yeah.
it's really, really, really hard and difficult to tell ahead of time by just looking at somebody's,
Oh, it is
profile, or, and most people don't give like, here's a free trial just to see if we click. You know what I mean? It's like you got to pay for that first session. You've got to
right.
come in there and see that.
So there used to be like a 15-minute consultation that a lot of people would do, but a lot of people have gotten away from that.
Hmm.
Um, Veritas, that's why we're thinking about doing a podcast, to, like, let you get to know a little bit more about us as
I
clinicians.
think that would be brilliant. I mean, like to be
Yeah,
able to get to know the mind of your therapist before you even consider going in there. Be like, are you listening? You're like, oh, I really like this person. I want to talk to them in person. Yeah.
yeah, and a lot of therapists will they may not, you know, like, today I had somebody like, "Hey, let's do a 15-minute call." Like, I will always do that, like,
Mhm.
let's do a 15-minute call and see if we vibe or not and, like, what you're got going on, um, because it is hard, I hate to I'm not trying to minimize it, but we've been talking about, like, working out at,
Mhm.
like, lots of different gyms, right?
Yeah.
And you can kinda just go in a gym and feel like, "This is my vibe or not my vibe."
Yeah.
And I would say it's the same thing with the therapist. You have to shop around a little bit and be okay with that
Right.
and not feel stuck. Like, the first time can be uncomfortable or slightly awkward, but it shouldn't be like, "I'm uncomfortable." Like, I actually get very frustrated at some of my friends that tell me about their therapist experiences, and I'm like, "I do not know why you're still going to that therapist because you 2 clearly do not agree."
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right. Right. Yeah.
Like, it's just like, why are you doing this to yourself? And I think it's healthy to switch
Yeah.
because we grow.
Hmm.
So through my life, I've had 3 long-term
There it is. I'm praying.
had to use it, didn't I?
You had to. Yeah. It comes up naturally. Well, this it helps that I have a huge billboard of the name just right here on the screen.
I've had 3 different long-term therapists where we're all so close, and if I still needed them, I would call them, but I kinda moved to different phases of my life, right?
Hmm.
I had my trauma therapist where she helped me with past deeper trauma. Then I had my therapist who spent years with me going through, divorce, custody, parenting. And then now I have my therapist who understands me more professionally, my professional stresses. And, oh, I've got to tell this to the world. You can have more than one therapist.
Okay.
I am so tired of hearing people say you cannot have more than one therapist
Hmm.
or a therapist telling you you cannot have more than one therapist because that's completely untrue
Okay.
because we specialize in different
That's
things,
true. Yeah.
you know? Now, ideally, you want good coordination between them, but honestly, you don't have to tell them if you're seeing different ones. You cannot see a therapist on the same day because they won't pay for 2 therapists on one day.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay.
So that is one key thing, but you can have more than one therapist. Like,
Wow.
if you wanted to have a therapist that helped you focus on addiction or a relationship, and then you wanted to have a therapist that helped you focus on goal setting with your business or whatever, that's totally normal and fine.
Okay. Polytherapeutic
I
relationships
like it.
are are acceptable.
They are.
That's awesome. Well, Angela, thank you so much. I mean, you've educated me on so much about here, and I'm definitely going to do more of a deep dive on this. This is really fascinating and interesting work, and so
Yeah, I'd like to send you some music too.
yeah, I'd like to hear the binaural, as you said,
Yeah, bilateral stimulation.
bilateral
You can
stimulation.
have on like I said, it's everywhere, Spotify. They might say binary beats,
Okay.
but you can also pull up, which I have saved on my iPhone, the actual EMDR music
Mhm.
or the Brainspotting music too.
Okay, great,
It's free,
perfect,
yeah.
amazing, awesome. Well, if somebody wanted to keep up with you, where would they go for that? Because you've got your own therapy clinic
Yes,
coming, right?
I had joined Veritas now, which I'm very excited about. I'm not too far from you now.
Right.
I'm in Little Rock. I'm getting my things set up there. Uh, really, right now, I'm mostly active on my Facebook page, and it's just Angela Campagna. Uh, I'll be updating some stuff on Veritas site too. Sure, and but really, for right now, probably the easiest thing is just to follow me on Facebook until I get all these other things going.
Okay. Awesome. They have your listing on Psychology Today and all the other.
Working on it.
Yeah.
I'm
Okay.
working on it. I actually said it was going to be due last week, but I'm going to do it this week.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Perfect.
And I'll
Awesome.
share it on there.
Okay. Great.
Yeah.
Well, when that comes out, we can put that link in
Okay,
the
cool.
description here for this episode. So yeah, thank you again, and thank you for joining us on this episode of Long Term. I think this is the most in depth we've gone on any one like particular psychological concepts, and so but it's been fascinating for me. I've been in class all morning, so this is great. Um, and yeah, I'm sure like everybody learned something from this. And if you know somebody that would benefit off of, hearing something that was said here today from what we're talking about, how to choose a therapist with the importance of connecting with them, that you know yourself, how do you get to know yourself? I mean, we've covered a lot of subjects, and then of course the brain spotting, which is incredibly interesting. um, yeah, share this episode with that person. And, those tell people the worst thing can happen is they won't listen to it, but the best thing that can happen is it saves their life. Um,
I've actually been a follower for a while,
yeah.
and it really has helped me, and I've learned a lot of things.
Same. I feel almost guilty doing this show because I'm getting a lot out of it. And I'm like, I hope somebody else is getting value out of this.
Oh,
I certainly am.
you are.
So,
You're helping so many.
always want to encourage you to like, subscribe, and comment, and that helps drive the engagement up. It helps us get these episodes out to more people because the algorithm starts favoring you whenever you have more interactions. And so, because of that, would love to have more subscribers. We're over 12,000 now, or 13,000. Sorry, we crossed 13,000 on YouTube just recently, and yeah, the audio is growing, and so as I go and speak in Florida in a couple of weeks. I'm sure to help that'll grow, do some more interviews down there in Orlando and Punta Gorda, which will be my first time there. And yeah, That's interesting. It's gonna be an impactful year. By the way, we're recording this on the first day of the year, so we're starting off with a bang. Yeah. So thanks, well. Thank you, Angela, again. Incredibly helpful. And like I said, we'll put your details in the comment or on the description of the episode. If you would like to follow Angela, if you'd like to potentially pick her up as your therapist, that'd be great.
I have openings right now.
She's got openings. So, we'll put that down there. And until next time, well, thank you for joining us in these episodes.
Thanks, Ty.
Thanks. All right.